There are these moments where an acute medical fix can be helpful, but far and large, it really is that daily routine of what do I want my life to be about? And I want my life to be about peace, and I want my life to be about my own spiritual evolution. And so when I make that the forefront of my life, and I craft the food that I eat and the people that I hang out with and the things I put into my body and I put on my skin around that, everything starts to line up downriver. And I was actually really inspired by you when you were on our podcast. I got to thinking about clothing and I thought, man, it's maybe not going to happen tomorrow, but I really want to wear clothing that puts fabrics close to my skin, that sweats those chemicals into my body. No, thank you. And there are these little things that we can start to actually let go of every single day that can really clean up our health.
Welcome to the Woman's Doctor podcast, helping empower women to embrace their body and soul's full potential. I'm your host, Dr. Trevor Cates, and after 22 years of working with patients, I found the answers to our health struggles are much deeper than most people realize. To help explore this, I'm interviewing colleagues and other wellness experts to get to the root cause so women can realize their true beauty and be informed decision makers for themselves and their loved ones. Our skin, emotions, hormones, and soul are more connected than you may realize. To help explore this, I asked today's guest to come on the podcast. Katie Silcox is the New York Times bestselling author of the book Healthy, Happy, Sexy, Ayurveda Wisdom for Modern Women. She is the founder of the Shakti School, a school for women-centered holistic wellness. Her business focuses on the convergence of ancient holistic medicine, modern science, and heart-centered spirituality. In today's podcast, we cover an Ayurvedic approach to skin and hormones. Katie shares how to look at Ayurveda with a modern-day approach. I even share a very personal story about a skin issue I had a few years ago. This and much more on today's episode of the Woman's Doctor podcast. Katie, welcome. It's so great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here with you.
Hey, so let's start by talking about Ayurveda. Can you explain for people what it is? We've talked a little bit about it on the Woman's Doctor podcast, but for those who haven't heard that episode, can you tell us what it is?
Well, I created a 2-year program to try to explain what it is, but I'm going to try to do it in less than 2 minutes. And that is, Ayurveda is a beautiful 5,000-year-old oral-based healthcare system, preventative medical, folkloric, spirit-based healthcare system from India. And it was, flowered in the Indus Valley thousands of years ago. But what most people don't know about Ayurveda is that good ideas really like to travel. And so it traveled all throughout China. Some say it was influenced by Egyptian medicine. It definitely influenced our Greco-Roman medicine, and it formed a lot of the core ideas of what we could even consider to be allopathic Western medicine. And so on one level, it's from India, but on another level, it's just how life works, which is what the meaning Ayurveda means. It means life wisdom or life science. And in a really practical way, it's about really understanding who you are as a unique person and understanding your natural rhythms and patterns and how you're unique, but how that uniqueness interfaces with the patterns of nature, which are what are happening for all of us, whether it be geographic or seasonal or even astrological. I mean, there are all of these big forces of nature affecting us. And so we really want to understand not only our own unique individuality, but we really want to understand how we can get in alignment with nature so that we can work with those rhythms rather than what most of us are doing a lot of the time, which is working against those rhythms. And eventually we're going to struggle and suffer for that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, great. Well, let's talk a bit about how you apply it to things. Like, how do you apply it to skin, for example? Like, how would you approach skin differently than maybe conventional doctor or even different than Chinese medicine or different other types of medicine?
Yeah. Well, skin is one of the coolest parts of Ayurveda because In Ayurvedic medicine, we understand skin to be a tissue layer that's downstream from a number of different tissue layers. And it all starts, as I know you are really into, Dr. Coates, it's the digestive system. And so the skin is actually a byproduct of your lymphatic system, your blood, your fat, your muscle, and primarily your digestion. So we can really see changes in skin when we alter our food intake. We also consider the skin to be the largest organ of the body. And what's so cool about Ayurveda is what you say on one level, so we could talk about physical digestion, can also be said on the emotional or mental level. So with our skin in Ayurvedic medicine, emotionally, we understand skin as boundary. It's the thing that separates me from you. And so for many of us, that boundary is going to show our emotional state. And I know many people that like go into a situation that they don't like. Let's say you have a bad boss at work or something, and you immediately get a skin hive. Or, I have other people that like will start getting bloated, or their skin tone will get gray and sallow or even dry. And Ayurveda says this can be related to an emotional reaction. What's also super cool is that from an Ayurvedic perspective, we can really see the imbalance based on the symptomology. And so we break down reality into these three really neat boxes, and then it gets really complex. But these three boxes are, there are people who are born with more Vata, which we could call degeneration. There are people that have more Pitta nature, which is metabolic transformation. And we have people that have more Kapha, which is going to be more like building and holding on to things, which is kind of more of a heavier, wet nature. And we can really see that in the skin. You have listeners out there who are like, raise your hand. Yes, that's me. I have total dry, sort of more sallow or graying skin. Others of you, like probably me and you, we're going to have that more rosy, sensitive skin that just like anything can kind of affect us. And we're going to have more of that red and rash and red type of oily acne. And then we have our Kapha people, that kind of more heavy earth and water group of people who like have this beautiful skin. It doesn't matter what they eat. They always look amazing. They've got creamy, milky skin. And they're like, well, what are you talking about? The only imbalance I ever get is just like maybe a cystic acne every now and then. And so, I mean, I could talk on and on, but really we can understand our skin based on our individual nature. And the remedies that we use are going to be really different if you're a air, aka Vata type person, than if you're a Pitta person or you're a Kapha person.
Yeah, well, I definitely want to explore more of that. But first, I love this, idea of our skin being, it's definitely our barrier. And if physical, real barrier, has this barrier function to the outside world, but also energetically, emotionally, it is this, physical barrier. And so, it was something really interesting happened to me a few years ago. And I've always had fickle skin. That's partly why I got into skin,
Of
was because my
course.
skin has just always been reactive, and I've always known like, okay, well, that's not going to work with me, or that's not going to, so because my skin has always given me a lot of messages. But a
There you
few years ago, I developed a sun sensitivity, and it
go.
was in the summer, and I was like, why do I all of a sudden I've have this reaction to the sun? And I started to think about like, what have I done differently? What have I done? And I realized I'm like, oh yeah, I let this guy back into my life.
Yes, sister.
Instead, now I can look back and go, oh, that was a really, really bad idea. But, I think my body was trying to give me these signs for like from an emotional and an energetic perspective, like, hey, you know what? This is not a good thing for you. And it was giving me that ultra sensitive, ultra reactive. It wasn't functioning the way it was, it would optimally do. Right.
That's so amazing, and I know so many people out there listening can really resonate with that. I just told you that I got back from the biohackers convention and I was covered literally in poison ivy. And poison ivy is an allergic reaction, but there's always an emotional component. And as I'm now reflecting back, I'm like, wow, that was a really stressful time to take a huge cross-country trip. I have so much going on, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we are so quick to think in these very linear, sort of rational ways of thinking, but your skin In the Ayurvedic tradition, what's so beautiful is we don't have any hard and fast rules around sexuality, but when someone touches your body, right? Like you mentioned having a partner and your skin reacted to them, they didn't need to be back in your life. Skin is actually considered sacred holy ground. When I put my hand on your body, right? That sacred touch, whether it's sexual touch or just loving touch, is I begin to interface with the tissue layers of who you are. That's a very intimate thing. And so, it's not to say don't let everybody hug you. It's more to say to be cognizant of the fact that who touches us, that's an honor.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our bodies are so sacred and we forget about that sometimes. And our skin can remind us about that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's talk more about what you were saying with the different types of treatment based upon Ayurvedic approach. So can you explain a bit more, maybe give some examples of that?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's way more. I want to make a t-shirt that answers every question in Ayurveda and it's just going to say, it depends, right? We
Right.
are very much an individualized healthcare system, but there are these kind of patterns that I think that we can use, especially in the framework of a podcast. So, if you notice that you have dry skin, we understand that those are the qualities of coolness, dryness, rapidness, and are related to the emotion of anxiety, fear, and overwhelm. And so, cold, dry, mobile, we want to make sure that our remedies for our skincare include warmth, wetness, aka lots of good whole fats, oils, right? Hydration, eating foods in our diet and teas that are warm, wet, and fatty are going to augment our skincare health. We want to put spices in our food like cardamom, cinnamon, black pepper, things that are just a little bit spicy, not too much, right? That are going to warm the system. Ghee, coconut oil, avocado. You guys all know this stuff, but that can be very helpful for people with dry skin or even dry vagina, right? And so that's our Vata ladies. And by the way, all of us, every single one of you listening, we're all shrinking and drying. That's happening. Doesn't matter how you were born or what dosha or body type you have, that's going to happen. And so as we age, these kind of fatty, warm, spicy remedies are going to be really helpful. Now you were moving to the realm of the fire queens like me and you, where we're like driven, ambitious, right? Like super smart. Like we think we're right all the time because we usually are. Think we have to carry the world on our shoulders. Like I know our listeners out there are like, yeah, that's me. And so we tend to these more pitta imbalances of acne, overactivity of the skin's immune system. Also, things like eczema that's more heated rather than eczema that's going to be more drying. That would be more on the Vata side. Our remedies need to be cool and spacious. That can mean breath work, drinking aloe vera, eating blueberries, mint. I love getting in the sauna, but maybe taking a break from that every now and then. Doing remedies that are going to be cooling. Our number one Ayurvedic ally in skincare for Pitta type skin is aloe. The name for aloe is Kumari in Ayurveda, and that means like supple young virgin, right? It's like keeping the skin of your body healthy. But here's the cool part. Your skin is showing us the skin of your intestinal lining. And so we can use these sort of cues from our skin to see what's going on in the digestive tract. And then the last would be our more Kapha ladies, who are going to be those kind of creamy skinned people who tend to get a little bit wet on their skin. They may feel like they just kind of get a little bit of a glow. And like I mentioned before, some cystic acne. We're actually not going to encourage them to put on as much oils, especially if they're younger women. And so for those women, things like skin brushing, right, is going to be super powerful. And I always tell them a good oil for them is going to be something super light, like an almond oil. And so I could go on and on, but those are just some basics around the 3 different types in your skin.
Oh, that's amazing. And does it change depending upon the time of the year and other factors, or is that sort of year round?
That's a great question, and the answer is yes and yes. Okay, so it changes on a number of things. It changes on the time of year. For me, I'm still in like the hot days in Virginia, and so we're not quite ready to start those more warming oils. But when I'm here in January and February, I'm going to be doing a lot of those things that are going to reduce those cold and drying things. So it has to do with the season that you're in, the temperature of where you live. I know some of our listeners are out there in Colorado. My like Colorado ladies, we're always trying to get them more juicy and more covered in oil, right? Because it's dry there. But it also depends on the stage of your life. If you're 18 or 24, you can get away with a lot of stuff with your skin that you can't get away with when you hit perimenopause and thereafter. And so it really does depend on that as well. And then it depends on what's going on, like we've mentioned, in your life. Like typically I've been blessed. Skin is not the place where I typically manifest my imbalances. Trust me, they manifest other places. But like every now and then I'll be like, oh wow, that's so weird. I have a dry patch on my elbow. So I'm gonna just treat the imbalance, right? Would be what I would say. Treat the imbalance.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Do you want to address whatever is currently showing up because we
Exactly.
have different needs at different times. And so,
Right.
but noticing that you have these certain tendencies, sort of
Ex-
like we have genetic predispositions. So, are these types somewhat genetically defined? Like, are you similar to other people in your family or can you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Mhm.
I mean, comically so, right? Yes. I mean, there are so many things that we can see, especially with things that are more physiological, although mental and emotional as well. We can really see that lineage ancestor line running through us. But I will say, I mean, within families, there can be, for example, my sister is a little bit more of like fire plus earth and water, whereas I'm a little bit more fire plus air and ether. And so my sister Mary and I, we have completely different skincare needs, right? And
Yeah.
yet there are some things. So yeah, you do need to take that into consideration for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense. So I know that you've talked with me about some interesting combinations of hormones, skin, sexuality, and soul. How these are related. So is that from an Ayurvedic perspective, or is that just your own
Just
discoveries?
Katie's special sauce.
Right.
No, absolutely. I feel like my destiny is to help translate Ayurveda and to do my best to stay as true to the tradition as I can while doing what the tradition tells me to do. These books from thousands of years ago tell us that we have to adapt the tradition to the time, place, and people in which we're presenting it, right? And so Ayurveda understands that everything is connected. Everything, right? You pull one string and the whole universe starts to move. And so one of my mentors is a woman named Dr. Claudia Welch. She wrote an amazing book I'll give a shout out to called Balance Your Hormones, Balance Your Life. It's one of the best books on Ayurvedic medicine out there. And it's so interesting because she wanted to call the book Balance Your Life, Balance Your Hormones, right? The publisher made her switch it because balancing your life is often what ends up balancing your hormones. Whereas we're like, oh God, I got to get my hormones balanced so I can have my life feel more balanced. And Ayurveda really takes this sort of opposite approach. And, I think women sometimes get frustrated with me because they're like, well, what do I do about my thyroid? Or what do I do about my, amenorrhea? Or what do I do about my fertility? Or what do I do about my sexual desire? And what I say is start at the basics, right? If you're not scraping your tongue or, going to the bathroom every day and chewing your food and taking 30 minutes at least a day to calm your nervous system, we don't even need to talk about anything downriver. The basics of Ayurveda are going to be the same for me as they are for any woman that comes through our school. And that's what's so cool. It's like those simple remedies. I said to a friend the other day, I am just like you. Like I came to Ayurveda because I've struggled with digestion my whole life, right? And still don't have perfect digestion. And I was like, you know what I realized the other day? I pretty much can eat whatever I want as long as I eat it in what Ayurveda says, eat in a calm environment, chew the food to an even consistency, eat things that your great grandma would have recognized, and don't eat until you're full. Just stop right before. Just don't get overly full. And I'm like crying, like it's so simple, but we make it so complex because I think often we want to keep our bad habits. And we think there's going to be this one superfood or this one hormone balancer that's going to like change our whole life. And then suddenly we'll have like perfect health and glowing skin and sexual desire for our husband who hasn't been treating us well. No, it's way more basic. So yeah, I don't know if I answered the question at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that in society today, we're so much looking for the quick fix. Everybody's asked it. So even if it's not even a prescription medication or an over-the-counter medication or a toxic skincare product, it's like, what herb can I take to get rid of my headache? What herb can I do to balance my hormones and get rid of all of my symptoms? Like they want just one quick thing. And while
Mhm.
there are some incredible herbs and nutrients and big needle movers out there that you take it and it's like, wow, this is really helpful. If you
Mhm.
don't have that healthy foundation, it's you're missing out. You're never going to get a full recovery. You're never going to get your health to that place. And it's we see this so much with women who are put on birth control pills because they're looking for that quick fix. Like, what can I do to regulate my cycles, get rid of period pain, get rid of hormonal acne, even when they're not sexually active? We see, so many young women put on this because it's like women are just like, give me the thing that's just going to make it all go away. And so that I don't have to think about this anymore.
Mhm.
And while, they might notice temporary relief, it just doesn't work that way, unfortunately, because you and I see the people that have tried that and then they want to go off of it or they've gone off it and then they're dealing with all of the symptoms that they had before plus
Mhm.
all the side effects of the medication. And so I think that the more people we can educate to like catch you and just say, hey, the earlier you start doing this, the sooner you start with some of the foundational stuff, the
Mhm.
better off you're going to be. And you can start this at any age in your life. So, but it is so true. Without that, there's just no quick fixes.
Yeah, I mean, you really just said it so beautifully. I love everything you said and agree. And I have to remind myself that as well. I'm a human. I want my pain to stop right now, please. You know? And like I think you and I are totally in agreement. There are moments like I had to go to the ER and get a prednisone shot and I hate western meds, and I was like taking that prednisone and I felt so much better. The whole poison ivy reaction cleared up and I thought, you know what? This is a spiritual moment because we can go dogmatic in every direction,
Mhm.
right? And I was like, thank you, great medicine of the prednisone. I hope I never have to take you again. But there are these moments where an acute medical fix can be helpful. But far and large, it's really is that daily routine of what do I want my life to be about? And I want my life to be about peace and I want my life to be about my own spiritual evolution. And so when I make that the forefront of my life and I craft the food that I eat and the people that I hang out with and the things I put into my body and I put on my skin around that, everything starts to line up downriver. And I was actually really inspired by you when you were on our podcast. I got to thinking about clothing and I thought, man, it's maybe not going to happen tomorrow, but I really want to wear clothing that puts fabrics close to my skin that sweats those chemicals into my body. No, thank you. And there are these little things that we can start to actually let go of every single day that can really clean up our health.
Yeah, absolutely. And, yeah, I absolutely agree that it's nice to have those things with medication, with conventional medicine when we need them. And what I have found is that when you do take really great care of your health and you have that healthy foundation, when you do have to do the cortisone or the antibiotic
Exactly.
or the ibuprofen or whatever it is, the pain medication, it not only is it going to work better, but
Yeah.
you are going to recover better afterwards
And
because
not be addicted to it.
right. Right. And not have to, yeah, continue on it and stay on it. Because,
Mhm.
when I developed that sun allergy and my skin just completely flared up, it was cortisone cream that that I kind of had to eventually turn to kind of calm things down. But, it was funny. The dermatologist I was working with, she was amazed at how quickly my skin healed. And she was like, "What are you doing? Because you're not using very much of this cortisone cream and your skin is completely healing up." And so I, explained to her about all the other things that
You
I
were
was
like,
doing.
"I broke up with the guy."
There was that too.
That's my secret to radiant health.
Oh my gosh, made me blush. Yeah, so I mean, it's so important when when you do those things and you build that healthy foundation, your body's just becomes more resilient. So then when antibiotics are another great example. When you've really built up your gut health and you unfortunately have to take an antibiotic because of some sort of odd infection that you get, then you're going to recover from that, and your digestive system's not going to be totally wrecked, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you mentioned one thing that I oftentimes forget about, which is tongue scraping. Can you tell people what that is and why that's so important?
Yeah, and if I may, I'll add the great triad of morning routine:
Yeah.
lemon water, tongue scraping, neti pot. And it's like, oh yeah, in Ayurveda world, we're like, boring. We already know about that. But what most people don't know is when you do this triad, you initiate a detoxification process that affects every tissue layer downriver from your digestive system. So when you scrape your tongue, your body's worked really hard all night to get any of that upper respiratory excess. We call it ama, which is basically like toxic gunk that your body doesn't need. It's moving it up and out of you. So when you scrape your tongue, not only are you getting that first layer out of you, you don't have to swallow it and take it back down into your digestive system, but you're also getting a really cool screenshot of the inside of your digestive tract. And we can see those same 3 sneaky doshas right there on your tongue. If it's more gray, that's more of a Vata. If it's more yellow, that's Pitta. And if it's more kind of white and thick, that's going to be more Kapha. And so we can go, oh, wow, I've got a little bit of an inflammatory thing going on or an infection going on because I can see that fire, right? And so it's indicative of what's going on in our body, and we're getting rid of it. The neti pot cleanses the left and right nostril, and on a subtle body level, and so it does all those great things physically. So much of the viruses and diseases get in our body through the nose, and bacteria as well get in through the nose. But on a subtle level, we call it prana, an energetic level, you're initiating an energetic cleansing that is going to help channel and open the left and the right brain to come into more health and harmony. This is the basics of Ayurvedic breath work, and all breath work that everyone's super stoked and excited about. You're initiating a respiratory cleanse. You're initiating a digestive instigation when you drink that lemon water that actually turns on the digestive enzymes of your liver and your gallbladder. And through the tongue scraping, you're initiating another form of deep digestive cleansing. And so not only are you doing it on a physical level, you're doing it on a subtle level that keeps that initiation happening all throughout the day. And so if you're going to do anything Ayurvedically, do that triad of morning routine.
I love it. It's so interesting. Okay, well, this has been great, Katie. And I know we have so much in common. I grew up in Charlottesville. You live in Charlottesville, Virginia, and we've run into each other at conferences multiple times. We have the same publisher. You've got a book going on. We got lots of interesting synergies here. So, will you tell everyone where they can learn more about your course, what you've got coming up?
Thank you. Yeah. So we're called the Shakti School. We have a year-long women's health coaching platform. We base ourselves in Ayurvedic medicine, but we're like you. We love every women's holistic health tradition. We start this January for our year-long program, and they can find us at theshaktischool.com. We're on Instagram and all the places. They can find us there, and they can find us on Spirit Sessions podcast.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Katie, for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. As always, a great time with you.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Woman's Doctor podcast, be sure to share it with the women in your life and rate and review the show. And to learn all about balancing your hormones, join us for the Hormones, Health, and Harmony 9-part documentary series at hormoneseries.com.